I'm Brandi Kruse. Coming up today on Undivided, a year after the terror attack in Israel, Ari Hoffman joins us to reflect on what it's taught him about the hate that's living amongst us. Plus, I continue to believe this is one of the biggest scandals we have seen when it comes to Seattle Mayor Bruce Harrell.
Sean Scott says you endorsed him for a state legislature run.
Come on now.
Plus, restaurants in Washington state are struggling, and the latest change to Seattle's minimum wage is only going to make things worse. That and more coming up today on Undivided. Remember, you can support our show for just $5 a month by signing up at undividedpod.com. Hello and welcome to Undivided. Thank you for being here on a Monday. Thank you so much for your commitment to giving common sense a comeback. Lord knows we need it in today's edition of What the Hell is Wrong with Our Public Education System. Today, in some places as we speak, on the 1 year mark of the horrific terror attack in Israel against innocent people attending a music festival. How it started. You have students in this state who are walking out of class in support of Palestine. It's mind-boggling to me. And it's not even just Seattle. Like, look, I'm used to Seattle schools, of course, indoctrinating their kids with their own political and social agenda. We talk about it quite a bit. But in places like Issaquah, man, Issaquah used to be outside that fray, but we've seen students there get more and more indoctrinated. Think about that. That's like, I mean, I hate to make the comparison, but that's like if on September 11th, you like walk out of school in support of the terrorists who killed Americans. It's such an insane thing to see. It really shows you, by the way, the extent to which students in our schools are being brainwashed to fall in line with the progressive and socialist agenda. It's really wild stuff. We, of course, wanted to start the show today with the fact that it is October 7th. It has been 1 year since the brutality that was unleashed on Israelis. And I don't know about you, it's taught me so much about the extremism on the left, you know, about the moral hypocrisy of the left. You know, when Donald Trump was in office, if there was a Nazi swastika painted on something or some, you know, semblance of anti-Semitism from the right, you would rightfully see so many people on the left speak out about it. Oh, all this hate from Donald Trump and, you know, right-wing neo-Nazis. But then you see this grotesque anti-Semitism on the left, and they're just silent because it's members of their voting base that they need in an election year, so they don't want to anger them. So you have these walkouts happening, pro-Palestine, which they just border on pro-Hamas, pro-terrorism walkouts happening in our public schools. It's insane. Of course, there's been an alert put out, and I think it's relevant for everyone to be on high alert today, that there could be some sort of, you know, attacks in solidarity or actions in solidarity with the terrorists that carried out the attacks in Israel a year ago. So certainly that's something the FBI, the Department of Homeland Security, is on high alert for. And then you have over the weekend, so I will say there were certainly pro-Israel rallies and reflections over the weekend. There was one in Occidental Park on Sunday ahead of the Seahawks game, which I was happy to see. There was also the anti-Semitic rallies that were happening, but our friend Jason Rantz was down there for a rally of remembrance at Seattle's Occidental Square. I think it was just heartening to see like people in their Seahawks jerseys who they were going to the game, but this is what they were doing first, and they were honoring the lives lost in Israel and the continuing fight there. So I guess that was one sort of moment of, okay, not everyone has lost their freaking minds, right? But I wanted to have Ari Hoffman on the show today. Ari Hoffman, of course, our friend, host at KVI. He's Jewish. He has been, you know, not only locally but nationally, one of the most outspoken critics of some of this anti-Semitism that we have seen on full display from the left in this country. And also he has a lot of ties to Israel. He has personal connections with individuals who either kidnapped and remain alive or who were killed on October 7th. So Ari was nice enough to join us today to reflect on not only the past year, but also what's going on right now. Ari Hoffman, welcome back to Undivided.
Good to be here, Brandi. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so it's been a year. What's going through your mind today?
Well, I mean, aside from the usual commemoration stuff that we're kind of used to as Americans with 9/11, last night I found out that a student who was thought to be held hostage, who was from my son's university in Israel, was actually among those declared dead last night. So October 7th isn't over. It's still going on. There's still over 100 hostages. I don't want to keep comparing it to a 9/11, but it's something that Americans at least have some idea of what happened. But when 9/11 happened, that was it. Then there was the war in Afghanistan. Then there was the war in Iraq, the war on terror, the war and everything else. But October 7th is still going on. Yes, Israel has all these battles it's fighting in Gaza against Hezbollah in Lebanon and against Iran. But there are still hostages who are hidden somewhere in the tunnels of Gaza. And we still don't have them back, including a whole bunch of Americans.
What do you make of in the last year the extent to which this horrible attack has been politicized, has been, you know, justified, not just nationally, but here in Washington state?
I didn't realize how many anti-Semites I was surrounded by. I hate to laugh at that, but you always knew anti-Semitism was a thing growing up as a Jew. And I always used to tell people, oh, I dealt with so much more anti-Semitism in New York than I ever dealt with here in Seattle. Well, that just ain't true anymore. The amount of stuff we saw at University of Washington, the amount of stuff that's been exposed in the public schools, it actually makes me more thankful for people like you, Brandi, because you were always there to cover this stuff when a lot of other people in the media just wouldn't. You were always there to expose this kind of stuff, to hold people accountable. And it's really nice to have friends like you. But I look around at this stuff and I just can't believe how it's so pervasive, how it's everywhere. And what's even more shocking to me are the people who were completely silent, who were supposed to be there for us. Bob Ferguson, Jay Inslee, what? They both issued posts today for October 7th? Shut up. Where were you guys all year long? Bob Ferguson says he's going to fight against anti-Semitism. He was MIA all year. He didn't even put out a post all year long. Jay Inslee, same thing. When the stuff was happening at their alma mater, University of Washington, with the Gaza encampment, stopping Jews from walking on campuses, it's a lot of empty, empty words. And unfortunately, a lot of Washingtonians just aren't paying attention. They say, what does this have to do with me? It's thousands of miles away, some war I don't want my tax dollars going to. Why should I even care? It's not thousands of miles away. It's right here in our state, in our cities.
Yeah, and to the extent to which I think one of the things that's been surprising to me is like how acceptable clear acts of anti-Semitism have been. And I mean, for instance, I don't know if you, I'm sure you did, that in Issaquah, students are planning a walkout for today. In pro-Palestine walkout, there was the Bellevue elementary teacher the other week who was trying to justify a swastika that had been painted on the building. What do you make of that? The extent to which these clear, anti-Semitic bends have been sort of normalized.
Well, it's not just Issaquah High School. I mean, they're planning on walking out of close to 20 schools,
God.
including high schools and colleges today. And we'll see how many of them actually do it. But it's been normalized because our elected officials don't do anything. I reached out to OSPI's office to get something from Chris Rakedal today. I got a nothing burger. Reached out to Jay Inslee's office, got a nothing burger. It's because they don't care. And in some cases, like Bob Ferguson, they're actually being funded by organizations like CARE, the Council for American Islamic Relations, which was an unindicted co-conspirator in the largest terror trial in U.S. history, the Holy Land Foundation trial. So I look at this and I say, people just want power and they want the donations from whoever they can get them from. They want the votes from whoever they can get them from. And I remember when I was running for office, there were I had to cave on my values, to cave on my morals, and I wouldn't do it. And for anybody who's running for office, political consultants are useless. Don't hire them. But I remember a whole bunch of them trying to get me to say things that just weren't me. And I just wouldn't do it. And I lost my race, but I can be proud of that because I didn't compromise my values. And look how many people we have with compromised values, compromised integrity.
Yeah. On the flip side of that, over the last year, have there been any politicians or leaders, not just locally, but nationally or globally, that have you believe really met the moment or even surprised you?
No, absolutely. I mean, you look at somebody like Governor Ron DeSantis in Florida, even before October 7th, the amount of anti-Semitism legislation that he was passing in Florida was off the charts. He's been there for the Jewish community the whole time. Governor Greg Abbott's another one. Right here locally, Jared Neuenhouse. He's been fighting against this stuff since day one. Since day one, Travis Couture, the John Braun, JT Wilcox, when it all happened, they contacted me immediately. And they go, we don't know what to do. We know we want to do something. What should we do? And it's important also to recognize that sometimes politicians, think they're all full of themselves and they think they have the answers to anything, but to recognize when they don't have the answer. Dave Reichert, not even in office. But as soon as that freeway was shut down in January, he came out with a statement right away, said something right away. And we still haven't gotten a statement from that freeway shutdown from Inslee or from Ferguson or from Bruce Harrell or from any of these guys. Bruce Harrell, he's actually one of the worst. Bruce Harrell says all the time he's so good for the Jewish community. He lives in the heart of the Jewish community. And yet when all this happened, he wouldn't meet with the Jewish community, wouldn't talk with the Jewish community. And then finally, months later, in December, for Hanukkah, he said he wanted to go visit one of the Jewish schools for Hanukkah. He was invited to. He didn't post any pictures to his website, didn't talk about it anywhere, no press releases, nothing, didn't even have the news reporters with him, nothing, because he's afraid of what the other side might say.
Yeah, we would be remiss if we didn't shout out John Fetterman too. Can you believe Senator John Fetterman who would have thought?
I should not have forgotten that one. That one I did not have in my 2024 bingo card.
No.
I was one of the people railing the most against him, and I actually called his office, not just to say I want to have him on my show, but to apologize and to say, I'm sorry I misjudged you, and it would be an honor to have you on the show. And actually this year, something shocking. He graduated from Harvard. He went and he spoke at the graduation of my alma mater, Yeshiva University. And while he was there, they have these different tassels and robes and stuff that you wear for graduation. I wouldn't know. I'm still a credit shy of graduating. And he ripped off his Harvard one, and he said, it's not appropriate for me to wear this today. I had parents, people I've been friends with my whole life who are hardcore Republicans going, if that guy was running here, I'd be voting for him.
Right? Yeah, who would have thought? I guess, like you said at the beginning, and it's important, this isn't over. It's not really an anniversary as much as it is an ongoing horror, for people in Israel. What do you think, we have an election coming up. What do you believe will bring that to an end?
So I don't think it ever ends unless people have the will to actually have it end. I am concerned that America has forgotten what it's like to actually win a war. America seems like, okay, where can we get to a place where we're just kind of happy to be done with it? And I don't think people realize it took decades to denazify Germany. And you talk about Gaza, where these kids are trained to hate by the UN Workers' Relief Program, UNRWA. That's in their curriculum. That's in their textbooks. You have to undo all of that. And I don't think Americans have the stomach for it. I don't think most of the world has the stomach for it, for what we had to do. And look at Germany now. Germany is one of the ones standing most with Israel. Look at Japan now. Look at South Korea right now. Look at all those countries where we still have a military presence, but we're not at war. I wonder if America has the stomach to do what it has to do, because I don't think a lot of people realize that they're not just focused on Israel. They're focused on coming here to the U.S. Look what happened in downtown Seattle over the weekend. Those chants were not just anti-Israel, they were anti-American also. And right here in Seattle, one of the speakers for that rally was the editor of the Palestine Chronicle. The Palestine Chronicle, whose journalists were the ones holding hostages in Gaza. That's who they asked to be a speaker at their event in downtown Seattle this weekend.
Yeah. I have to say, though, heartening on Sunday to see fans in their Seahawks gear taking time at Occidental Park to have a pro-Israel rally. I thought, well, we need more of that.
Yeah, that was really, really nice to see all that right before the game.
Yeah. All right, Ari. Well, I know, you're a tough guy. You act like it on the radio, but I know that you've had a lot of tough moments over the last year, and you continue to have a lot of tough moments, and you've been just the fiercest advocate for people in Israel, for hostages, and for just a return to sanity on this issue. So I'm thinking about you today, and I appreciate you taking time to come on, and the fight continues.
Thanks, Brandi. That means a lot. Appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely mean that. Thinking about Ari and all the other people who have been so deeply impacted by what happened in Israel a year ago. And, whenever I talk about this subject or we discuss what I really feel like are anti-Semitic protests happening, people are like, yeah, but they're just, standing up for innocent lives that were taken in Gaza. And, that's the problem, is that they're not. A lot of them aren't. I have seen very few nuanced protests, very few nuanced statements from elected leaders on this issue. Like, nuance is fine. Nuance is great. Of course, when you're looking at a conflict and you have any innocent lives lost, that's a horrible, horrible thing. No child deserves to die or be killed in a conflict, regardless of the sins of their parents. But, when you get into this by any means necessary, and if you had, for instance, students walking out after October 7th, demanding justice for those who were killed at the music festival and elsewhere in Israel, and then they turned around and protested what they felt like was an unjust response from Israel, that's a totally different thing. But you don't see that. They did a leapfrog over the innocent Israelis and Jewish people who were murdered. And then they went straight into anti-Semitism and straight into the vilification of Israel and its belief that Israel shouldn't exist as a state. And so, yeah, there are nuances possible on this issue. I think there is a good nuanced position for people to be able to take, but that's not what we're seeing. And he brought up Bob Ferguson, Jay Inslee. I've said it a million freaking times, if it had been the Quad at their alma mater taken over by right-wing neo-Nazis, they would have had a press conference within 1 hour. And they would have continued to speak out about it, demand accountability, demand those students or anyone involved be held accountable, be removed from the school. But they said nothing. They said nothing because that was their political base. And that's inexcusable for me. The same with Bob Ferguson. He gives these tepid, he was asked about the blockade of I-5 for hours on end by pro-Hamas demonstrators. And he doesn't say anything about it. He's holding a press conference, asked about it. Well, I'm not talking about that today. If it had been right-wing neo-Nazis or Trump supporters, he would have been talking about it. So it's this insane moral hypocrisy that it's unveiled on something as easy to condemn as anti-Semitism, as pure hatred. So anyway, just wanted to recognize it's been a year since the terror attack in Israel. There are still a lot of people who are struggling. There are still people being held hostage, and there are a lot of cowards living amongst us, and cowards and people filled with hate who are running for political office, who are in political office, and we have to keep exposing them. All right, I want to talk about the initiatives really quick. First of all, if you've been watching TV, if you're watching the football game over the weekend, you know just how much money is being spent to defeat the Let's Go Washington initiatives, to defeat Dave Reichert and paint him as a right-wing extremist. Millions and millions and millions of dollars. Man, the left has it figured out. They have a machine, and that machine is churning out dishonest political ad after dishonest political ad. And frankly, Let's Go Washington, candidates like Dave Reichert, they don't have the money to be on TV to be countering those ads, but they can release ads to the internet. And I'll tell you, Let's Go Washington just released one hell of an ad calling out the lies of the No on the Initiative crowd.
Pinocchio is the new spokesperson for the group opposing the initiatives. Let's join the live press conference.
Welcome, everyone! As Governor Inslee promised, the carbon tax is only costing residents pennies. Wow! Without it, funding to roads and bridges will be cut. Our capital gains tax is only going to affect rich people, and if they don't like it, it's not like they're going to move out of state. But even if they did, we would never tax middle-class families instead. How about the WA Cares Act? Allowing people to opt out will kill the program? Question, sir?
Didn't you promise not to ban natural gas?
Well, we didn't exactly. It wouldn't be inaccurate to assume that we did or didn't exactly not say there is or isn't a ban, which may or may not be almost partially correct or incorrect.
That's really good animation, by the way. Oh, it keeps going. I think there's a little end to it, right? I love this. Where are you, Pinocchio? Oh, sad Pinocchio. Oh.
We gotta get you a new job.
Yeah. The funny thing about that ad, though, one of the things that stuck out to me, I mean, I think it's a genius ad because really it's about the lies in great part for me with the policies we're trying to repeal by getting people to vote yes on the initiatives. One of the things that stuck out to me, though, that was like totally just off base in the ad, reporters asking hard questions about the lies. Like the reporters in the animation were like, wait, didn't you say this? And they're not doing that. They're just letting the other side millions of dollars on totally dishonest ads. They're letting the governor lie. They're letting Bob Ferguson lie. They're letting the union spending millions of dollars lie, and they're not doing jack about it. But anyway, I like that ad. So maybe they don't have the money to put it on TV. Maybe they do. I don't know. But we can put it on our show. Friends. We can share it all over social media. So I thought that was very, very effective. Now, on the initiatives, So we've been calling out the Seattle Times for their wild endorsements on a variety of things. They have no interest anymore in holding powerful people accountable. None at all. You can lie about a policy and they'll endorse you for governor. You can lie about a policy and they'll say, oh, don't repeal it. Don't repeal it. So they just have no, you can fail the public school system as the Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction, and they'll endorse you for a third term. So it's all about political ideology. They don't actually care about holding people accountable. But I said this on the show multiple times, the Seattle Times will have to throw Let's Go Washington a bone somewhere. There's no way they come out against all 4 of the initiatives on the ballot, because even they know, well, gosh, we'll totally look like hopeless ideologues if we do that. So I knew that at least in one of the instances, they were going to have to just say, oh yeah, vote yes on that as a kind of throwaway. They still haven't released their endorsement or non-endorsement of the initiative dealing with long-term care, which I'll get to in a moment, because I find it very hard to believe they don't say vote yes on that. But they did come out and say they are supporting Initiative 2066, which would protect natural gas as a choice. So a little bit of, I think they did this again, just because they're like, which one will anger the fewest Democrats? And they saw how much support this initiative gathered in such a short period of time. So it says the Seattle Times editorial board recommends vote yes on Initiative 2066, insist on a better gas transition plan. And they went after lawmakers for the fact that they passed this thing at like 2 a.m. to try to move Puget Sound Energy away from natural gas. It says lawmakers' slapdash effort backfired spectacularly, with the Building Industry Association of Washington and the Washington Hospitality Association leading a repeal initiative that gathered more than 500,000 signatures in just 50 days and putting energy choice on the ballot. Tacked on was a concurrent repeal of new state building codes that make installation of gas furnaces nearly impossible. Washington's climate goals call for decarbonization to occur as fast as equitably possible, but that can't come at too high a cost to consumers, or voters will mutiny. Even some climate activists acknowledge natural gas may still have a role in the future in providing a peak or backstop fuel during storms or electricity outages. Its pipeline infrastructure could also be converted to carry other cleaner fuels like hydrogen. If Washington is to effectively face down the threats of climate change, its leaders must make a winning case for decarbonization. As this initiative demonstrates, they've failed to do that so far on natural gas. Lawmakers can and should do better, and the initiative holds them accountable. So I'm happy to see the Seattle Times doing that. I don't take them seriously, though, because they're talking about how, they need to make an effective case on decarbonization. Have they really made an effective case on the Climate Commitment Act? Yet the Seattle Times said, we can't repeal the Climate Commitment Act. We can't do that. The Climate Commitment Act is built on lies. So on one hand, the Seattle Times is saying, don't support the initiative that repeals the Climate Commitment Act. And then on the other hand, they're saying, support the initiative that stops the natural gas ban. So those two things are in conflict for me, but we'll take it where we can get it. Also, they didn't release, so like I said, the Seattle Times editorial board hasn't made, I don't believe, we couldn't find it, its endorsement for or against the initiative to make the state's long-term care program optional. They did, however, post dueling op-eds on it. They posted one saying vote yes on 2124, and they posted one saying vote no on 2124. So I guess readers could read the position on both sides and decide what they want to do. But I again, find it highly unlikely the Seattle Times editorial board doesn't make its own decision. I would be shocked. Well, no, not shocked is the word. I find it more likely than not that they say vote yes on 2124 because it has been such a deeply broken program. And we know, first of all, there was a Democrat who showed up with Brian Haywood. Mark Mullet went and he did the editorial board interview for this. So there's bipartisan support to making it optional. And it's just about giving people a choice. It's not about repealing it entirely. So we'll wait to see what the Seattle Times says on that. I have to play a clip from our Sunday show. If you're not a subscriber to unDivided, this is one of those Sunday shows where I'm like, man, we really should make this interview public. But we do our Sunday show for our wonderful subscribers. We had on, in fact, I've got his book here. He's probably like, you don't have to pitch my book, Brandi, but I will because he gave me a copy of it. The Bullish Case for Bitcoin by Vijay Boyapati. So Vijay, he is an entrepreneur. He is a former Google engineer, was an engineer at Google pretty early on in that company. And he has become kind of this unlikely spokesperson in favor of Initiative 2109 to repeal the capital gains tax. And I say unlikely just because he wasn't uber involved in Washington politics. Obviously, he made a lot of money working for Google. The capital gains tax is something that would impact him personally, but he joined us for Sundays with Subscribers and made, I think, a really effective case as to why even if you're not rich, even if you're not impacted by the current iteration of the capital gains tax, you probably will be eventually as they seek to lower it. But it's also about making sure that Washington is a place where people want to come to start a business, where people can come like him, an immigrant, and have the American dream and be successful and not dissuade or punish success. So here's a clip of my conversation with Vijay Poyapati from Sundays with Subscribers.
I came to America because I really believe in the American dream of freedom and pursuing your own happiness. And I came here with nothing. I mean, I had a few $1,000s that I'd gotten in an academic scholarship that was actually worth a lot less because the Australian dollar was so low at the time. So I didn't come here with very much. And, becoming wealthy is a dream for a lot of immigrants. Immigrants don't come to this country to soak the rich or tax the rich. We come here to become rich. And we love the fact that America is the land of opportunity. So I joined Google, and Google created a service that's used by billions of people every day. And in doing so, Google became an enormously valuable company. And like many tech employees, a lot of my compensation came in the form of stock. Mm-hmm. And a lot of tech employees actually have to take extra risk to get stock compensation. They have a lower salary, and many choose this. They say, cut my salary down from, $100,000 a year to $50,000 a year and give me more stock, because they believe in the vision of the company and they want to build something big that a lot of people use. And so, I was at Google. I had stock as compensation. And when Google went public, I became wealthy on paper. And I had a big decision to make, which was, do I stay in California and pay a very large state income tax, and that's on top of the federal capital gains tax when I sell my Google shares, or do I move somewhere which doesn't punish success, does not tax people when they have a big success by building a business or working at a company that's successful? And I already loved Seattle. When I first came here, my sister and I visited a bunch of cities to look at PhD programs. And we both loved Seattle. And I thought, wow, Washington doesn't have an income tax. It has a great tech sector as well. Google had an office up here. And I thought, why don't I just move up here? And I did. And I moved up here. And I actually think the fact that Washington doesn't have an income tax is actually a very powerful incentive for people to come here. And a lot of tech people have come here. Jeff Bezos actually cites this as one of the reasons why he started Amazon in Washington. Yeah. He said that it had a very business-friendly environment, friendly at the time. Yeah. This is, going back to the 90s, and it didn't have an income tax. And I like to think about, and I did a debate on TVW, and I asked the other person, I said, do you think Washington would be better off if Bezos had founded Amazon somewhere else instead of here?
Mm-hmm. What did he say?
He didn't really respond. He talked more about, the argument always becomes an emotional argument. Yeah. Think about the children. And of course, I have 4 children. I care about kids, and I care about the education system in Washington being fantastic, both private and public. So I don't think he gave a good answer to that. I think it's a very difficult question. And I also asked the question, what would Seattle be like if we never had Paul Allen here? It'd be a very different city, right? There would be a lot less of the city developed, a lot less of the philanthropy that he gave to Seattle. The Seattle Public Library is an institution that really is where it is because of Paul Allen. So we don't want to turn away people who are successful. And one extra point I want to make is, and I made this on the NPR interview, I'm not against necessarily taxing rich people, but there is a way to do it that doesn't harm the whole economy. Mm-hmm. You could, for instance, tax people on luxury goods. So, for instance, if Bill Gates has a yacht, you could put an extra surcharge on buying a yacht or buying a jet. These are things that only benefit him. It's because he wants to enjoy the privilege of going on a yacht. And sure, he can do that. I don't have anything against that. but that's not a social good. But the capital gains tax, that harms capital formation. It harms the creation of businesses, the growth of businesses, and the incentive for people to come here. That harms all of us.
Had we had it, when did you move from California?
In 2006.
So in 2006, had we had a tax on capital gains, would you have moved here?
Nope, I would not have. I would have looked at one of the other states. I did love Seattle. I would have considered Florida, Texas, Tennessee, Nashville is basically income tax free. New Hampshire is another one. There are a lot of options. I mean, it's also fair to say that there are a lot of states that do have an income tax, but you have a choice. And if you look at the net migration numbers, people are moving out of California and out of New York. Where are they going? They're going to Texas and they're going to Florida. And they were coming to Washington too. With this capital gains tax, I think what we're going to see in the next few years is wealthy people are going to start leaving and they're going to go to places like Florida and Texas. And I have multiple friends who've done this.
That's part of my conversation with Vijay Boyapati, an entrepreneur, also a former Google engineer. And he's really hoping to drive the message home, especially to Seattle's tech community and Washington's tech community, that, hey, this is something that you ought to support. Initiative 2109 to repeal the capital gains tax. You can watch that full interview by becoming a subscriber. You can sign up $5 a month, undividedpod.com, undividedpod.com. And man, he has some fantastic points in there, because I had asked him about people like Nick Hanauer. You know, you've got these very progressive billionaires and they support the capital gains tax, or are they just more righteous than you, that they just are okay? And he said one of the things he pointed out, because he thinks like a person with money, you know, and so he thinks differently. He said, look, all they're doing is being gatekeepers to other people becoming as wealthy as they are. You know, people like Bill Gates, who are supporting all these other efforts on the left, is, you know, they as billionaires, you know, they have a way to avoid capital gain. Look what Jeff Bezos did, right? He just moved out of the state. And so what they're really doing is becoming a gatekeeper to other people being able to build wealth. And the point I would also make on why you should vote yes, pay less on 2109, even if you think, well, I'll never sell, $250,000 worth of stocks or bonds or something in the course of a year, they're going to reduce the threshold. They already have tried to reduce the threshold, and they will, if this thing survives an initiative, they will change it. Mark my word. They will change it so that the sale of your primary home is a capital gain. So if you did well, you bought your home early, you've now turned it into basically your retirement account by saying, I'm going to be able to sell this and retire on the proceeds. Imagine having to pay a big chunk of that toward the state government as a capital gains tax. That is what they're going to do. So repeal it before they do it. Repeal it before they have a chance to do that. All right, coming up next in our segment, Unbelievable, I am stunned. I am truly stunned. I thought better of Bruce Harrell. Apparently I was wrong. He is, by all accounts, supporting a police abolitionist in a race for state legislature. We're going to dive into the latest in this story, which we started tracking last week. First, if you're thinking about selling your home this year, check out our friend Wes Jones at sellwithwes.com. We've had so many undivided viewers and listeners who chose to go with Wes Jones when it came time to sell their home. One of them is a retired Seattle police officer named Mike Boggs, and he loved what Wes had to offer, like his listing boost concierge service, and he couldn't believe how fast Wes sold his home.
Wes came out and met with us, and we told him what our concerns were, and he mentioned the concierge service, and we did take advantage of it. And it was, I think, the smartest thing we've ever done as far as selling a house. We sold in 6 days for a full asking price. It was really amazing, especially in, this isn't the greatest climate for house sales right now, and that's one of the concerns we had was we're building a house, and so you have to kind of time this correctly so that you have the proceeds from the house that you're selling to put towards the house that you're going to be buying or building. And we actually put on the market a little sooner than we thought we needed to, and it sold so fast that it was this is fantastic.
So check out Wes Jones, sellwithwes.com, sellwithwes.com. He'll start by giving you a free market analysis so you can see how much your home is worth. It might be worth more than you think. And then he can tell you about their innovative marketing strategy to get the most possible eyeballs on your listing and make sure it stands out. Sellwithwes.com, a better way to sell your home. Mayor Bruce Harrell, it is a yes or freaking no answer. It's a yes or no question. Do you support the campaign of a socialist police abolitionist, Or don't you? Let's talk about it in our segment, Unbelievable. I cannot believe this. I'm so stunned by this. So let's just sort of reset this up, because I refuse to let go of this story. I refuse until Bruce Harrell tries to run for re-election. I swear to God, we'll talk about it constantly. So there is right now a race for state house happening in the 43rd legislative district. That is the heart of Seattle. So it is pitting Sean Scott, who is a socialist police abolitionist, against Andrea Suarez with We Heart Seattle. So Sean Scott, and just as a reminder, like back in 2020, he was absolutely advocating for police abolition. He was posting articles about it. The time to abolish Seattle police was yesterday. He has been out. I mean, one of his quotes was like, you know, change was happening a lot faster when there were police cars on fire in the city. So he is a fringe activist. He's a democratic socialist. He's a police abolitionist. He has in recent months, while campaigning for the 43rd legislative district, supported rioting, supported acts of criminal unrest, like the blocking of freeways, like the blocking of access to Seattle-Tacoma International Airport. This is as fringe as it gets. So a lot of us sane people who support public safety were understandably confused when Sean Scott was at a candidate forum and was listing off people who supported his campaign, and he said this.
Also been endorsed by Representative Nicole Macri, who would be my seatmate in Olympia. We're happy to have the support of the actual 43rd Legislative District Democrats. Proud to be supported in this race as well by Planned Parenthood, by the Washington State Council of Firefighters, and actually by the Mayor of Seattle as well.
And I thought, no way. I even said last week, did I not say last week, I think Sean Scott's probably lying. Because what was weird about it, first of all, Seattle Mayor Bruce Harrell, he has acted at least like a public safety mayor. He supports police, wants to hire more police officers, wants to get the crime crisis under control, has actually said what needs to be said in many instances when it comes to the open air drug use downtown, the crime, etc. So I thought, no way in hell Mayor Bruce Harrell is supporting an avowed police abolitionist. That would be a betrayal of the men and women of the Seattle Police Department and a betrayal of the downtown Seattle business community. I just don't see it. And the other thing that struck me as weird is he lists this whole long list of the progressive who's that support his campaign. Every one of them is listed as an endorsement on his website except Bruce Harrell. And the way he said it, like, I'm supported in this campaign by the mayor of Seattle, I thought for sure last week it was Sean Scott who was lying. But then it became pretty clear that Mayor Bruce Harrell wasn't willing to simply answer yes or no. So we reached out, we've sent multiple emails. I have sent multiple text messages to his communications staff. Jason Rantz has, Jonathan Cho has, trying to figure out, like, hey, he says this, is it true? Is that not a really simple freaking question for the mayor of Seattle to answer? Like, oh, no, I'm not, or yeah, I am. Yes or no? So the longer it went on that they were ignoring our emails, that they were ignoring our phone calls, that they wouldn't set the record straight, the more likely to me it became that Sean Scott was telling the freaking truth. So here's the kicker. Oh my gosh, this drives me nuts. So the biggest pro-police event of the year in Seattle is the Seattle Police Foundation's annual gala. And it was this past Friday where they raise money for needs of the Seattle Police Department that are unmet by taxpayer funds. So it's this big event. All the police are there. Police officers get awards for their bravery and all of this. And then people, in fact, the last time I went, which was a couple years ago, maybe the first time Bruce Harrell, the first year he was in office, I was there and he was there, and he and his wife raised their paddle to donate a good chunk of money to the Seattle Police Foundation. So anyway, this event is on Friday. We didn't go, but Mayor Bruce Harrell was there. So this is so crazy to me. So our friend Jonathan Cho, intrepid independent journalist, he ends up going, uninvited, I think, and cornering Mayor Bruce Harrell, as he often does. Why does Jonathan always corner people on elevators? It's a thing for him.
It's tricky.
But I love it.
I love it.
Corners Bruce Harrell on an elevator to ask him again that simple yes or no question. Here's the video.
Hey, how are you? It's been forever.
Yeah, how are you?
Can I just ask you one question? Sean Scott says you endorsed him for a state legislature run.
Come on, man.
I just wanted to ask.
You're recording right now, right?
Yeah, but is it a yes or a no?
I'm not going to answer anything right now.
Jason Rantz put out an article that you did.
I'm not. I'm good.
Fair enough.
Good evening. Raise the money for our police foundation. Real happy.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you for your service, man.
Won't answer the question. Will not answer the question. He says, we're here, we're focused on raising money for police. It's a simple freaking question. Do you support Sean Scott's candidacy or don't you? And the fact that he wouldn't answer tells me he does. The fact he wouldn't answer tells me he does. What a betrayal. What a betrayal. It makes him unfit. He is now de facto unfit to be the mayor of Seattle. And was I not very supportive of him in the early days? Thinking he's saying the right things, he's being supportive of police. How dare you show your face at a fundraiser for the men and women of the Seattle Police Department, while at the same time refusing to distance yourself from a police abolitionist who supported rioting, attacks, criminal unrest against the men and women of the Seattle Police Department, who still to this day does. How dare you show up at anything pretending to be pro-police? Everything he said, everything he's done, everything he said he supports when it comes to hiring more officers, supporting good officers, cleaning up the crime crisis downtown, it doesn't mean jack shit anymore. Done. If you are honest to God supporting a police abolitionist to represent downtown Seattle in Olympia, especially when the other candidate is someone who actively, day in and day out, is working to help people who are drug addicted downtown, is working to help people who are homeless downtown, is telling the truth about the crime crisis, is supporting law enforcement. I'm stunned. This is a scandal. And the other thing I'll say, so I went on X this morning just to make sure I didn't miss anything. Like, I miss things, right? I can't be everywhere. And so I said, hey, have any legacy media outlets covered this that I just haven't seen before I go absolutely scorched earth on them? Because to the best of my knowledge, we've talked about it. Jonathan Cho has talked about it. Jason Rantz has talked about it. I think Ari Hoffman has talked about it. So it's like conservative-leaning media and independent conservative media, when this should be a story being covered by every major outlet in Seattle that has talked about the crime crisis or the police staffing shortages at all. Imagine that. Imagine as a mainstream outlet not wanting to know, not having the curiosity, the care or concern to find out whether the mayor of Seattle is supporting a police abolitionist at a time when we're down 600 officers and he said he wants to hire more. Imagine not having that curiosity as a journalist. At the very least, wouldn't it pique your interest when he's dodging the question? When he won't respond to emails, he won't respond to texts? A candidate has said this and Mayor Bruce Harrell won't confirm or deny? Is the media really that lost? Yes, the answer is yes. Are they really that captured? Yes, the answer is yes. And there really hasn't been a lot of media coverage on the fact that there is a socialist police abolitionist leading in the race for a legislative seat in Seattle when we have all these issues that having a socialist police abolitionist would make decidedly worse. And the media does not give an F. They genuinely don't care because they're that captured by the far left. And so I mean, look, I could be wrong. There might be media outlets who are working on it right now, sending emails. They're getting the same block that we are, but you don't have to wait. It's a story already. It is a story that the mayor won't say yes or no. I really think what his team is trying to do is make it go away. Like maybe he offered some support to Sean Scott behind the scenes and it wasn't like a full-on endorsement. But now people know about it, and now he won't just answer it. That's a story in and of itself. It's an easy story to write. Police abolitionist says he has the support of the mayor. The mayor won't say yes or no. What's going on? That's your freaking job in the media, right? Not a single one of them give an F. It's crazy. I don't even know what to say. It's the biggest scandal that a Seattle mayor has had since old Ed Murray. A totally different type of scandal. But I can't remember something that has floored me since that as much as this when it came to a Seattle mayor. maybe the missing text messages with Jenny Durkin. It's on that level, though. It's insane. So he won't say yes or no. Good for Jonathan Cho for cornering him in an elevator and getting him on tape saying, oh, I'm not answering that right now. No answer is a yes. Because it would be just easy, like, no, I didn't say that. I don't know what he's doing. So we've also reached out to the Seattle Police Foundation today, which I've worked with the Seattle Police Foundation several times in the past. In the spring, I hosted their awards ceremony in the spring. So I've been very supportive of the Seattle Police Foundation. I want to know, though, what they think about the mayor potentially supporting a police abolitionist when he says that he supports the men and women of the Seattle Police Department. That is nuts. And I think we're going to try to get... Has Mike Solon responded to you? We're going to try to get Mike Solon with Seattle Police Officer Guild to chime in on this and see what he has to say about it. What a gut punch, though, to police officers who need a little bit of support right now, to police officers who thought they had a friend in the mayor's office because he's been saying all the right things. Well, he just got caught with his hand in the socialist cookie jar. Unfreaking believable. Who wants a socialist cookie? You know how gross those probably are? It's like this. Although I imagine it being kind of similar to how you bake. But I was surprised. Yours was delicious. Nicole made some muffins this weekend that were made with like monk fruit instead of real sugar. They were gluten-free. And I was like, that sounds disgusting. And I ate one. I'm like, holy smokes. That was delicious. That was delicious. Today. Oh, good. I said Mike would want some, so he'll love that. Anyway, just wild, wild stuff. So speaking of the downfall of Seattle, man, they just really, you have a more moderate city council, but I don't know that we're really seeing the benefit of that. If you've got a mayor who supports a police abolitionist and then a Seattle City Council who has not stepped in to do anything to help struggling businesses. So there's been this debate happening. So first of all, let me rewind like 8 years. I was back on Fox TV at the time, and of course, Seattle was on the front end of this, dramatic increase in the minimum wage. So at the time, though, when they passed it in Seattle, it was a phased-in increase to the minimum wage, where, okay, bigger businesses, you're going to have to make this leap first, and then smaller businesses, you can kind of follow. And then for restaurants, they were doing something called total compensation, where, as long as you've got a base hourly wage that is below what we've set for the minimum wage, but as long as total compensation gets them there, like a waitress, tips are going to get the waitress up to the minimum wage that other big businesses, for instance, are handling. So, well, the clock ran out on that. The clock ran out on the phase-in, and all of a sudden restaurants are faced with having to increase the minimum wage and total compensation not being factored in. And they went to the city and said, look, we know that this gradual increase was happening, but we're living in a much different economic reality right now. And the truth is that we can't afford that. We'll have restaurants that have to close their doors. And apparently the city doesn't care. Apparently the city doesn't care. There were some rumblings in the city council of, we really need to maybe extend this or prolong this for some of these restaurants because they're going to fold. And then unions are so powerful so that all that went away. This from the Capitol Hill Seattle blog. Seattle set to let minimum wage tip credit expire. Seattle political leaders will not push forward to extend the city's tip credit. Now, small restaurant and bar owners are preparing new solutions to make ends meet, including plans for significant service changes. So despite the economic reality for many restaurants in Seattle and across the state of Washington, there is no interest from Seattle political leaders to try to cut them a break. This segment is brought to you in partnership with our friends over at Future 42. Turn your frustration into action at future42.org. So one of the groups that's understandably very concerned about this is the Washington Hospitality Association, and their members are, a lot of restaurant owners, big and small. The president and CEO of WHA is Anthony Antone, and he was nice enough to join us today to talk about what it means for these restaurants when that tip credit goes away. Tourism and hospitality specifically, your sector, how has it been doing?
It's been a tough 2024.
Okay.
To be honest with you, it's actually really interesting in that there's some dichotomy. The urban areas are really struggling. So downtown Spokane, downtown Seattle, Tacoma. But this year, when you look at the sales per units, we're pretty much down, with Seattle leading the way of being down. And when you look at Washington's, we are 60% less profitable than the national average.
Gosh.
So the profit margins for restaurants in Washington are down to 1.5%. Which is simply just not sustainable.
No, and we've seen that. We cover stories here and there, and I know there's a lot of issues, and I know it's complex. We just had the Spokane restaurant tour on who said, I can't do it anymore. I got tinfoil blowing in my door when I open it up from drug users. For you, what are the challenges for the hospitality environment in especially those urban areas?
Well, I think one in the urban areas in particular, we're seeing trouble with traffic. Meaning the convention centers are not full. They're not back up to the 2019 level, which we talk a lot about. When you close down a state, we sell those conventions 4 years earlier. So this should have been the conventions we were selling in 2020, but we were closed. And so, and other states were open. So people who would have booked here booked in the states that were open, from Houston and Texas and Louisiana and Florida. And even Nevada was open more than we were. And so they got a lot of our convention business, which we're now trying to recruit back. So we have to get back traffic. And the downtown areas have to get to a place where the neighborhoods want to come downtown to eat.
Yeah.
And right now that's a struggle.
It is.
Then there's cost and elasticity. So we're seeing major increase in several different costs here in Washington. Certainly the minimum wage is one of those, but there's been others from the new overtime rules about who can be salaried and how those work, for other taxes and varying things in different areas, and other just costs are up. And we all saw the inflation numbers, right? The overall cost of food is up 30-some%. And so while restaurant menu prices are up 27%, because restaurants are trying not to pass everything on to you, at some point their costs go up. So we're seeing some elasticity, and the customers are saying there's only so much I'm willing to pay now on the other end. Yeah. So a lot of people will tell you it doesn't matter what the minimum wage is as long as the customers will pay it. But when they stop paying it, because the prices have gone too high, then that compression really starts to feel some pain.
Yeah, and that's what we're talking about, is the minimum wage. So several years ago now, when this was all being negotiated about increasing Seattle's minimum wage, there was a recognition that, hey, this is going to be harder for smaller businesses, for businesses like restaurants that don't have this, wild profit margin. So they were allowed to do something called total compensation, where it was like, okay, the tips, for instance, that someone receives go toward their total compensation. So then the timeline came up, and that was supposed to be phased out. How hopeful were you, though, that the city of Seattle would recognize the current system and say, we can't phase that out yet?
Well, I think if everything stayed exactly like it was back in 2018 when the conversation was had, I think, or actually it might have been 17. I think we knew it would be tough to change it. But what we were assured was, if the economics change, if there's big variables, of course we'll be there to help small business. If something goes awry, of course we'll be there to assist. And if something comes up we can't foresee, or you're still having challenges with us, of course we're willing to help you. Well, we had a pandemic. We had record inflation. We've had massive struggles with workforce, and we've had downtowns deteriorate and traffic be down. There's a couple things that have happened since then that we did not anticipate. And so the minimum wage that we're thinking might be around $18 and something has now been close to 21, a massive increase. And so when customers aren't willing to pay the higher prices anymore, and the traffic is down and our costs are up, we were taking them up on the offer to say, please help, because things are different. And then labor said, hey, this is our city, and we don't want you to help small business. And that was heard. And so I know there's since the announcement, we're going to do a lot to help small business, but we're at a point where words really don't matter. Action's going to matter. If someone's going to help small business, they're going to do it. But short of that, they've declared there's nothing on the table to help small business in the future, in the short term, as far as actual serious things that have passed.
Yeah.
And operators got to start making plans. Like I said, 1.5%, not sustainable. the debt we incurred during COVID and the traffic levels we have now are not sustainable. People just need to be clear that their city's not willing to help so they can make decisions.
So what's the likeliest course of action for some of these restaurants that were already operating on the margins? Is it they have to let people go? Is it they close their doors? What are you hearing?
They're just going to flat out have to make some tough decisions. And the tough decisions in front of them, certainly one of them is walking away from their dream. Most of our folks are small operators. It always cracks me up when people portray these issues as these major corporations. They're not. They're a teriyaki shop. They're a Korean barbecue place. They're a local diner. These are not massive corporations. These are locally owned businesses, and it's their dreams, right? That's the reason I love my job so much is we're still helping people chase that American dream. It's still there in a lot of other communities. And so for some of them, we're going to have to face that challenge of maybe this city and this dream just isn't for me. Others are going to just have to make serious decisions on their business model. The 1.5% is just not sustainable. People have to change. The debt load that we've not been able to wipe off from COVID is not sustainable. It's something that has to change. They're going to be trying unique things in their model, trying to survive. And so the more we can spread to the word that, yeah, it's different than it was, but they're being different because they still want to service you their great food and their great service a year from now. And they're trying to change so they can. And so we're going to see different tipping models emerge. We're going to see more technology being adopted. We're going to see portion sizes adjust. We're going to see pricing adjust. They're trying to find a way to survive when everything around them of what they knew about the business model when they first signed their lease, when they first chased their dream, is really changed.
That's Anthony Antone. He's the head of the Washington Hospitality Association. And here's what I would ask you, right? If you were trying to get small businesses to fail, would Seattle do anything different than it's doing right now? If that was your goal, right? Let's set out to ruin small businesses and to get restaurants to close their doors. Would you do anything different than you're doing now? Allow open air drug abuse to flourish? Vilify the police so you have the lowest number of police officers you've had as an agency in decades? Tax small businesses to death? Raise the minimum wage to the point where it's out of their reach and they have to decide, do we close our doors? Do we just raise our prices? Then we don't have any customers. I mean, really, what else would they do if the goal was to get small businesses to close, to force them to fail? And the same for Washington State. You know, keep them shut down during the pandemic for longer than other states in the nation. I mean, everything that they're doing, this is the obvious outcome. And so anyone who's in power right now in Washington State who's trying to convince you that they support small business, that they want to make sure that restaurants can thrive and succeed, I would point out all of these things to them and say, okay, then why are you doing all of this? Why are you doing all of this if that's your goal? That segment was brought to you in partnership with our friends over at Future 42. Turn your frustration into action at future42.org. All right. Are you paying attention yet? I sure hope so. There is a lot happening globally and nationally that can have a profound impact on your retirement and the quality of your retirement. And so one of the big questions to ask yourself is your financial advisor, are they adjusting as needed to these pressures globally, nationally, to politics, to things that are happening that could put your retirement portfolio at risk? They should be constantly adjusting. And if they're not, it might be time to find a new person to handle your hard-earned retirement. Zach Abraham and his team at Bulwark Capital, this is what they specialize in. They specialize in managing risk. Zach is not only the chief investment officer at Bulwark, he also hosts the Know Your Risk radio podcast. And he, along with Bulwark's analysts, track current events closely so they can adjust to market risks every single day to help shield your portfolio as much as possible. Risk management is always Bulwark's number one focus because you only get one retirement. So you can learn about Bulwark's risk management strategy in their free common sense investing guide. Get yours right now by going to knowyourriskradio.com. That's knowyourriskradio.com and protect that freaking retirement before it's too late. All right, let's get to our daily subscriber show poll and then we'll dive into questions or comments. So I asked you guys, October 7th today, reflecting on everything we've seen in the past year since the attack on Israel. I asked, how much will growing anti-Semitism factor into how you plan to vote in the November election? Significantly, somewhat, or it's just not a major issue for me? So let's check on, Patreon, Locals, and X. Over on Patreon, a lot of you are saying somewhat, not the biggest factor, but certainly it's somewhat significant. Julie H. says, anti-Semitism isn't the issue. The issue is the killing. I want the killing to stop. Harold Burns, it's not a key issue for me, only in that I'm already decided on the pro-Semitic candidate. So while this issue doesn't move the needle for me, it is still critically important. And I think that's true. A lot of these, I like how you put that, pro-Semitic candidates. A lot of the anti-Semitism that you're seeing is frankly from candidates on the left. And if you're a conservative, for instance, you're probably not voting for much of them anyway. Slim Jakey says, this is a topic I'm not touching with a 50-foot pole. You've got to. You can't let the anti-Semites get away with it. Erica Dorning, not sure why my comment didn't post, but it did post. I'm reading it. But I'm a Jewish American by blood. I don't follow religion, but I identify with the culture. I'm more worried than ever and sad my relatives who were in the Holocaust have to look down on this. It's important to me to vote for people who aren't standing for this. I think if you have that personal connection and it's truly impacting your faith or your family, it definitely hits in a different way. Over on Locals, Todd Welch says, who am I voting for is already decided for me, and Israel has no influence on my vote. Matthew Cook, like Elon has said, I didn't leave the party left me, which I can relate to. The Dem Party has had an anti-Semite problem and is moving further in that direction with the likes of Pramila Jayapal, Ilhan Omar, and Rashida Tlaib, and the rest of the progressive caucus. Yeah. Michelle, I have a cousin who converted. She has 2 beautiful daughters. She fought in the IDF and her brother-in-law is currently serving. This matters to me on a familial level and a human one. And I think that is. For all of us, it should absolutely matter on a human level. Reagan over on X says, I hate anti-Semitism, but it is an essential reason for me choosing to vote for conservative candidates. My core values align with conservative values and policies, which of course encompass a complete disgust for anti-Semitism. And, that's the difference for me too, is are there anti-Semites on the right? Of course there are. Of course there have been. The question is, are people calling them out? And then in turn also, when we see this rise of anti-Semitism out in the open on the left, calling that out. Someone like Ari Hoffman. Ari Hoffman has always been consistent. When there's anti-Semitism on the right, he said something about it. When there's anti-Semitism on the left, he said something about it. It's really not that hard to be morally consistent on the issue unless you are completely blinded by political ideology, which unfortunately far too many people are. All right, some comments on other issues. Greg Olakis, thank you, Ari, for saying what needs to be said. The truth. All it is money and power. They will stop at nothing to get it. Yeah. For Bob Ferguson, what other reason is there for him to look the other way when it comes to, the takeover and the anti-Semitic graffiti on the campus of his alma mater? And they put out some statement today like, oh, this is terrible. Okay, all your words and actions over the last year have shown that you don't care. And then you put out a little tweet on X with some statement that probably a staffer wrote for you and you want us to believe that you care. I think not. Rick Johnson, I thought people went into journalism for a lot of altruistic reasons, but they are in lockstep with the left. It's horrendous. Yeah, I cannot. Nicole, is it as shocking to you as it is to me that no one has done a story on the Bruce Harrell thing in old media?
Well, it's shocking to me in general, yes, but based on how this has been going for us this year, this is not shocking. This is their strategy, is to just not comment on anything, and then nobody covers anything.
They're completely captured.
No comment, just gets zero coverage from mainstream media here, and so they just stay out of it.
Yeah.
And their lack of comment should be the story.
No comment is a story. That's very easy. We asked him yes or no. Either he didn't respond, he's ignored a bunch of our requests, and that's problematic too. Like, you're the mayor of the city. You are obligated to respond to requests from the media. Now, you might not consider us media, and that's fine. You might not consider Jonathan Cho media, that's fine. But Jason Rantz works for a bona fide legacy media outlet. It's conservative, but so now you're going to tell me as the mayor you won't respond to conservatives when the rest of the media is decidedly liberal and you'll respond to them just fine? So like conservative bias, bad in the media. Liberal bias, totally normal and good. We'll associate with all of them. This is one of the things where I don't regret leaving old media at all, but it is one of the frustrations where I would have done this story at Fox. I absolutely would have done this story. And now there's like no one left to do stories like this. Lolly Wilson, I'm voting yes for the initiatives and for Dave. I'm a caregiver who wants real change in Washington state. It's interesting from a caregiver perspective that you want long-term care to be optional. You know, we had Kelly Chambers, who's running for Pierce County Executive. Her business, her family owns a business for long-term care. Her family business would profit from the state's long-term care program. She still supports, she didn't even support it to begin with, but she supports the initiative to make it optional because she realizes that, like, yeah, would it be good for my family and would I make money from it? Yes. Is it actual long-term care that's going to be meaningful for people? No. And I think that says a lot about her too. Country Guy, if it is unrealized capital gains, you can be taxed even if you don't sell your house. I think one of the reasons that they like the idea of taxing unrealized capital gains, that's a national proposal that like Kamala Harris has brought up, is they're hoping that most people don't know what it really means. They rely on that for a lot of things.
Oh, a lot. They think you're all dumb.
Well, yeah. Or they think you're totally disengaged. And if you just see an ad during a Seahawks game that says Dave Reichert is going to take away a woman's right to choose, that you won't look any further. And frankly, people aren't. Right. I have spoken to multiple friends or people I've run into at events. I was at an event the other day and there was a woman who wasn't there for the event and she was a Democrat. And she's like, well, I like Dave, but I'm really worried about the abortion thing. It took me like 2 seconds to convince her that it was a lie.
We actually rode with a friend this weekend, and it took you maybe North Bend to the pass to convince our friend to vote yes on all the initiatives. So we just need you to drive an Uber, and you can just pick up all the Dems over on Capitol Hill and convince them all to vote yes.
I believe if I had the time to have 1 minute with every Washington voter, the initiatives would pass 95%.
Absolutely.
And Dave would be the governor.
Sell. It's not a hard sell if you listen and don't listen to the lies.
Right. If you're gauged in truth. Let me see. Diana Manning, this was a great interview with Vijay Boyapati. I think Vijay should fund an ad where he calls out the two white billionaires trying to keep the likes of Vijay out of the club. Yeah. Right? They've already got all the money they need, so then they get to come off as these woke progressives who just want to help people. As Vijay said in the interview, there is nothing stopping Nick Hanauer from writing a check to the general fund of the state of Washington.
Right.
There is nothing stopping a billionaire. If you really want to be that generous with everyone else's money, there is nothing stopping you from writing a check to the general fund of the state of Washington, or frankly to the federal government. If that's how you want to spend your money, say, hey, I'm going to write you a check for $10 billion and we'll fund all the childcare and all these programs that I think are so important, and watch the government piss it away. And then watch you turn from a progressive into a conservative because you realize how utterly useless the government is and how it's a big waste of taxpayer funds, how that's all they do.
And like Vijay said, there's always a way for billionaires to get around something. Right. They have money to get around everything. It's like that famous cut from Trump in the Hillary Clinton debate where he says, that doesn't make me... It
doesn't make me like a bad person.
It makes me smart or whatever. And if you want to change it, then change the laws, right? And I think that's what we're doing here is we keep changing the laws and making it harder for them to get around. That's why Basil's left. He's like, I don't want to mess with that. I'll just get out. But there's always a way around. Like Vijay said, they can borrow from it. And then there's always a way around for the people that already have money. It's the people that are trying to make money that it hurts.
Yep, 100%. Tracy, the conversation with Vijay was fascinating. Thank you for spotlighting him. Captain Cranky Pants, the minimum wage will always be just that, minimum. It's all relative. Wages go up, costs go up. Again, 100%. It's like, oh, now I'm making $20 an hour, except everything I need to buy costs more now too. So I'm not financially any better off. You've just inflated everything. Old Sub Sailor, the Democrats are with a $20 super chat. Thank you. The Democrats of old are gone. If you're a Democratic socialist, you are just a socialist communist, whether you want to admit it or not. No Democrat about it. 100%. When they say Democratic socialist, it's a way to sort of couch their socialism in something that's, that people are willing to consume. And it says a lot about the state of the Democratic Party. Washington state Democrats are endorsing Sean Scott. And an actual person who's been a Democrat and worked for the 43rd District Democrats, Andrea Suarez, they're like, no, you're a Republican. It's like, okay, by any standard, it's just nuts. All right, KMT over on X. I don't want to give Seattle any tax dollars, so I don't eat there. Yeah, it's hard, though, because you want to support the restaurants, but I don't blame anyone who doesn't want to go downtown and go to a restaurant, in that area for safety reasons. But then also, I don't want to support a city that's going to continue to like go downhill. So at some point as a business, you just have to decide, like, if the city doesn't want me, do I just go somewhere else?
Right, because they're assuming the worst. They're assuming that you can pay more and you're just not. And they assume the worst.
And that you're greedy money grubbers, right?
Yeah.
Like, just give us money, but then you watch them. Can I say piss? Is that a swear jar issue?
I don't
then you
think
watch
so,
them
but
piss it away.
I swear already today. So
then you watch them piss it away, and it's like, okay, I go back to this for so many things. If you had policies and programs that, man, they were working so well. We were when they were dealing with the homeless, we're getting people out of addiction, we're firing on all cylinders. I just don't think I would be as virulently anti-tax as I am. Because there are some things that, in a civil society, like, we have to pay into, if we want roads and bridges and all of that stuff and a police force, like, I'm not like no taxes at any time for any reason. But when you get into these things where we're spending billions of dollars of our tax money on things like homelessness and it doesn't get any better, why would I continue to support giving you more money to just throw away? It's the dumbest thing.
It really is.
All right, Nicole, thank you. With that, let's get to our closing sanity check. All right, even 60 Minutes realizes that Vice President Kamala Harris is trying to sell voters a bill of goods that she will never be able to deliver on.
My plan is about saying that when you invest in small businesses, you invest in the middle class, and you strengthen America's economy. Small businesses are part of the backbone of America's economy.
But pardon me, Madam Vice President, the question was, how are you going to pay for it?
Well, one of the things is I'm going to make sure that the richest among us who can afford it pay their fair share in taxes. It is not right that teachers and nurses and firefighters are paying a higher tax rate than billionaires and the biggest corporations. And I plan on making that fair.
But we're dealing with the real world here.
But the real world includes...
How are you going to get this through Congress?
When you talk quietly with a lot of folks in Congress, they know exactly what I'm talking about because their constituents know exactly what I'm talking about. Their constituents are those firefighters and teachers and nurses.
Even 60 Minutes knows that Kamala Harris is not living in the real world. That has been your sanity check for today. That has been today's episode of Undivided. If you haven't signed up to support our show already, but you enjoy watching and listening to these free episodes, please sign up to help support our work. undividedpod.com. undividedpod.com. It's just $5 a month. What else? We'll continue to try to follow up with Mayor Bruce Harrell. We've got a lot of news to get to this week. Of course, we are honing in on the election. It's now less than a month away, so we'll have some more coverage and interviews rolling out. In fact, there'll be some election interviews rolling out this evening, tomorrow night, etc., etc. So thank you for being here. Thank you for your commitment to giving common sense a comeback. We'll see you back here on the show tomorrow at noon.